plot to assassinate a top Iranian nuclear scientist have been revealed in a leak to a UK newspaper. The Jewish Chronicle describes how Israeli Secret Service agents spent months learning their target's daily routine before killing him with a remote-controlled machine gun. And the Jewish Chronicle's deputy editor, Wallis Simons, joins me now. Hello to you. I mean, this assassination made headlines around the world. It's like something from a spy thriller. Now you've been able to establish more details about who carried it out and just how. Talk us through some of the headlines.
Well, I mean, this plot began back in 2018 when the Mossad famously seized this nuclear archive from Tehran and spirited it back to Israel, where they were able to open it up and see all the deepest secrets of the Iranian regime with respect to the nuclear weapons program. And there was one name that was all over the documents there, and that was Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. And he, later on, last year, was the man who was killed in this extraordinary assassination because he was so instrumental in that nuclear weapons program. And the way in which it was carried out, I mean, these are the new details that I was able to break last night and today. The way that it was carried out was really quite an extraordinary thing, as you've said, that seemed to come straight out of the pages of a spy thriller. It took 8 months to plan. A team of about 20 agents was operating on the ground, including Israeli nationals working in conjunction with Iranians. And what they did was they carried out a very, very detailed surveillance program over that period of time. In fact, one of my sources said to me that if Fakhrizadeh would have been wearing aftershave, they would have smelled it. And they hit on this idea to assassinate him using, as you said, a remote-controlled weapon. And the reason they chose that method was because it was hyper-accurate, meaning that there was very little danger of hitting any civilians or hitting his wife, who was in the front seat as he was driving, or indeed hitting any of the 12 bodyguards that were his entourage as he drove out of Tehran to his second home in Absard. So these agents had visual contact with him on the ground as he drove along in that car on that fateful afternoon. And they operated this machine, which they had smuggled into the country over a period of about 8 months, piece by piece. And this is a big machine. I mean, this weighed about a ton, my sources tell me. And part of the reason why it weighed so much was because it included some explosives within the machine, which meant that it could self-destruct once it had carried out the hit. So they see him coming down the road. He reaches the appointed location. They press the button. The machine opens fire from is mounted within a Nissan pickup truck. He is shot. Nobody else is harmed, and immediately the machine self-destructs and explodes, leaving no evidence, and the spies spirit themselves away.
How embarrassing is this information to the Iranian regime?
Well, my sources told me that the intelligence people who were involved in this plot on the Israeli side were even themselves surprised at the huge impact that it had on the Iranians in terms of the devastating effect on their nuclear program and their sense of vulnerability and their morale. I mean, they were hugely humiliated. This was a big and spectacular operation that took place very close to Tehran, that targeted their foremost nuclear scientist. I mean, if they can't keep him safe, who can they keep safe? By 20 agents, including Israeli nationals who were there on the ground in their country, using this high-tech device. I mean, it's got humiliation written all over it. It certainly, in terms of the hard facts of the case, the breakout period, which is a word that describes the length of time that Tehran would take to achieve a nuclear weapon if they accelerated their program today, that formally stood at about 3.5 months plus, there or thereabouts. After the death of Fakhrizadeh, it now stands at least 2 years, if not up to 5. And so it's been a significant setback in terms of substance, but also in terms of their morale, their international standing, and the way they feel about themselves. It's definitely deteriorated all of those things. Now they're asking themselves, what happened to those spies that we didn't manage to catch? Did they leave the country, or are they still here plotting something else? How can they think that they could have even one conversation about retaliation or about other operations overseas without the Mossad hearing and acting upon it. So they feel very, very compromised and very unsafe. And the fact that we at the Jewish Chronicle were able to break this story here, I think only adds to their distress. I mean, I know that it's been hugely popular in Iranian language media, as well as in Hebrew language media and around the world since we broke it. And the Iranian regime are going to be sitting in Tehran with their heads in their hands, just wondering how it could all have gone so wrong.
And one of the other questions that has remained unanswered since this assassination was who knew about it. What have you been able to establish about US knowledge of the plan?
Well, this is a really fascinating question because over the past sort of 18 months to 2 years, we have seen a variety of different strikes on Iranian capabilities. We saw the most famous one was Qasem Soleimani, the Major General of the Revolutionary Guards and the commander of the Quds Force, who was the most senior figure in the Iranian military hierarchy and responsible for all of their overseas meddling and adventures, taken out by an American missile in Iraq. We've seen Mohsen Fakhrizadeh killed by the Mossad, as I revealed last night and this morning. And we've seen other assassinations as well. Al-Masri was killed in Tehran with his daughter recently as well, which is an operation which the Mossad has been suspected of. And there's been sabotage in the nuclear plants in Natanz. Now, some of these things were definitely carried out by the Americans, in particular the assassination of Soleimani. Others by the Mossad, others are uncertain. But this particular operation, I'm told, was carried out without any American involvement. It was not timed politically. It happened just after the election when Biden had just taken power. So it wasn't timed to send a message to anybody. It was simply a security matter that the Israelis felt they had the opportunity to act, and they had to act to keep themselves safe and the other Western allies safe as well. Because, of course, if Iran does get a bomb, it would threaten the whole free world, not just Israel. And so, I think that it's important to recognize that this was not done with the green light from Trump. It was nothing to do with Trump. It was really to do with pure security concerns by the Israeli security services.
Wallis Simons, thank you very much indeed for talking to us through that story. This is Sky News. Coming up, I'm going to be asking a public health